Okay, so just as a bit of an icebreaker, if we turn our videos off, if the answer to the question that I ask is yes, turn your camera back on. If it's no, keep it off. So something easy to start with. Did you have breakfast this morning? Quick self-care question. Oh, 4 out of 6 is good.
Does coffee count?
No.
was off. No. No
So
off.
if you did have breakfast, turn your camera on.
Okay.
If you didn't have breakfast, keep your camera off. Yeah. Okay. Back off. Out of the room. Okay. So have you ever ridden in a limousine? I wasn't expecting that, Simon, to be honest. Where did you go? Where did you go?
Well, I've ridden in a few, actually, Chris. The first time when I was about 14 in a vintage Bentley.
Nice.
Black, yeah.
What about you, Aisha? When did you get in a limousine?
I think I went in one in Vegas from the airport.
Wow.
Nice.
I'm saying
Brilliant.
limousine now. I'm wondering if I'm remembered it more flashy than it was.
Was it just a taxi?
Yeah, well, it was definitely a
Just a
step
big-
up from a taxi.
A
Just
big
a big
taxi.
car.
Yeah.
And how about you, Paul?
Oh, years ago, just going to a last night out. I don't know how I end up. I don't know. I just remember years ago. I remember I have, but I don't remember much about it. I just know the answer to the question is yes, I have.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go off again and I'll do the last question? Okay. So, are you an active member of a group or a voluntary organisation in your community? I don't like you thinking about it. Aisha, go on.
Does it have to be in your geographical community, Chris? Sorry.
No.
That's a great question.
In that case, yes, I'm an active member at work in my community organisation at work, for sure.
I think, what about for you, Caris? What's the groups that you are thinking of when you step into the light kind of thing?
I tend to get quite actively involved in a few different groups, but yeah, I'm quite actively involved with like Green Top Circus in Sheffield.
Okay.
And I'm having a bit of time out, but have been quite actively involved in a housing cooperative network for a while as well.
Yeah.
But none of them are local geographically.
Yeah. But for you, Simon?
Involved in this local gardening and allotment thing going on in Wooldale, and also I put together a book club which has a different function apart from reading with some local people, and I'm also a trustee of a trustee across at SAW, Asia, in Sheffield. Yeah. So yeah, that's a couple of things that I'm involved in. Yeah.
It's one of the things. So I'm a trustee of the Wildlife Trust for Sheffield and Rotherham, but one of the things I realised when we started with the Well Rotherham programme, that I was encouraging lots of people to get involved in communities, but I wasn't that actively involved in anything in my own community, and I found that quite an interesting kind of debate to have with myself at the start of the project, that we were, it's really good if we can get all this grassroots action going, but then when I looked at myself and what I did, I sort of never quite found the time or the motivation to get involved in something on my doorstep. And I think the people in the room today, I think Aisha, Caris, you coming at this workshop from a sort of a practitioner perspective, and I think it's interesting for us to put ourselves in both hats, really, us as a community member and us as a practitioner trying to encourage other people to engage in community action. We're going to capture some notes today on a Miro board has, Caris, I know you've used Miro. Aisha, have you used Miro? It's a platform. Okay, I'm just gonna screen share, and you can get involved, but you absolutely don't have to. But it's essentially a virtual whiteboard. So if we make some points, we can sort of just capture them on here. So as part of an opening, it'd be great to just ask people what. Let's see, you can see it. What makes a good conversation? So the Well Rotherham project was all about going and having meaningful conversations with communities. What, for people in the room, makes a good conversation? So you could type it into the chat, or you can just speak freely, or however you feel best able to contribute. I'm just going to change the colour because it matters to me. What are the features of a good conversation?
Listening.
Yeah. Oh, he's doing it, isn't he? Yeah. I've got, can you see the link to the boards in the chat as well? But I'll put it in again. Anything else?
Asking questions, kind of open-ended questions, is better, isn't it? So, you know, to start to get people to talk more.
Yeah. What do you think, Caris?
I'm just thinking, I was just trying to work out how to phrase it, but something about like not being distracted, like, yeah, just like space and time.
Yeah. So that focus or something, or being present, maybe.
Yeah, something.
Engaging, yeah, engaging in it.
Attention.
Yeah. I think there's something for me about conversations being two-way.
Yeah, I was going to say two-way, yeah. Not just talking at someone, thinking that's a conversation.
I've heard it described as active listening.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think for me, there's something about listening and hearing. And the hearing part is more in terms of tuning into some of the detail or key things that are being said, as opposed to just listening and letting it wash over me, as it were.
Yeah.
Be open as well. Sorry, Simon.
No, go Paul. Yeah.
Just be open.
Yeah.
Conversation might not go the way you think it's going to go, or someone have a different view to you, but so be open to it. Be open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Often for me, good conversations have also been exciting as well, in terms of like hearing something new, hearing some news, opening up a new idea and potentials. I get really kind of excitable when I'm in that, you know, whether it be in a work-based type dialogue or conversation, or chatting to friends about stuff. I like, that kind of excitement, really. Potentials.
Uplifting as well.
Yeah.
Maybe this. Sorry, go on, Paul.
Just be tolerant as well. I'm thinking about Zoom actually, because you can be on a call with someone trying to have a conversation, and their Zoom, your internet's going funny, theirs going funny. The time you talk, they talk. Just it can depend on the method of your conversation. It could be face to face, it could be on the phone, or it could be over Zoom. It could be language barriers. So I think just be a bit, I don't know if tolerance is the right word, but
something about being accessible. That's sort of a bit what we're talking about there. Adapt to the people who are in the room.
Yeah.
Well, finding common ground. So so conversation always goes better, doesn't it, when you find something that you connect with the other person about.
Yeah.
So keep flogging away trying to find.
Yeah.
And make a conversation, if you know what I mean.
So today we met with some colleagues for the first time in ages. Actually, we went out for a coffee and walking those. I think I've lost the basic social skills of like chit chat in person. Well, when you're talking to people who aren't just disembodied heads on a screen, sort of trying to remember all the nuance of conversations in the real world. And I'd like to sort of bear this in mind, and we'll come back to the Miro board. So we're going to capture some of the discussion that we have later back on this board. I'm going to stop sharing this for now, and I'm just going to share a few slides just to describe what Well Rotherham is. So this session is to think about the boosters and barriers for strong communities. So myself, Simon and Sam have been working on a project called Well Rotherham for the last 3 years now, really, which seems to have flown by, and actually the programme's coming to an end. It was one of 10 Pathfinder sites across the north of England, part of the Well North initiative. So it's funded by Public Health England, and the focus was to go into places, have strengths-based conversations, and look at, with a special focus on trying to strip out some of the bureaucracy of trying to deliver change in communities, and a strong focus on finding individuals with great ideas and backing them. A lot of the other platforms were based in, so they were each very different because they were shaped by the community they were part of. So there was one in Oldham that focused on growing. The Doncaster one did a lot, worked in 3 kind of ex-mining areas of the borough, and focused very heavily on sort of micro community grants and job creation. The Rotherham Pathfinder was quite different. This was based at the Advanced Manufacturing Park at Waverley. So that's a development between Sheffield and Rotherham, and you've got new business coming in. So the University of Sheffield has a base there. They've got like McLaren, Boeing, some of those really big companies. You've also got 4,000 homes and a huge amount of green space. So the focus on this Pathfinder was what happens if you go to an area that's asset rich? What happens if you work with a completely brand new community, and then the surrounding existing villages, to think about what happens when you create a community from scratch, and how do you support that? At the start of the project, we brought stakeholders and community members together to do a project design workshop, and we ended up with a plan that fed into 3 themes. So a great place to work, and that was thinking about how do we look at the Advanced Manufacturing Park as an opportunity for the whole region? How do we promote that? So the things that came out of that was we did an event last December, the North Star, an event with Professor Brian Cox, where he came up and we were trying to inspire future scientists and celebrating South Yorkshire as the home of world-class engineering. Today, we're going to focus more on a great place to live and also an active community. Those are much more community-based themes. And for that, we did a series of community conversations, which Simon and I led, leading into a programme of micro grants, so great ideas grants, which were based on the priorities that the community identified. With an active community, we followed quite a few similar themes. There was lots of things that came out of our conversations, which were about greening, growing and gardening, which we pursued. If I talk a bit about a great place to live, this is sort of a summary of some of the volunteer-led projects. So the Great Ideas Grant was up to £300 for an individual, and you would come to one of our conversation events, pitch your idea to the community. If everybody thought it was a good idea, we would award the grant. And we were very you could just tell us what you wanted us to buy for you and we'd buy it, or we could just transfer you the money and you could buy it yourself. So there's a lot of trust given to people in that situation. So we had some really nice projects. The Catcliffe Indoor Bowling Club, they got put in a grant for some new equipment. The book group in Waverley asked for a little library so they could have a book swap installed in the community. Another lady came and had a project which was about a recycling bank for items that you can't put in your normal household recycling, so a thing called TerraCycle. 3 different community gardening groups came out of it. And and then sort of raised beds for the youth club in Treaton. And we also had a wildlife map that we developed around Waverley Lakes. And again, the active community, that was about connecting some of the local green assets, which there's so many around that area, and trying to inspire local groups and organisations. Like there's a very active community-led mountain biking group in the area, so we've supported them to try and develop mountain bike facilities in that patch. I think as we come to the end of the programme, looking back, very, very proud of the projects that we've agreed and got going, but it hasn't been without challenge and frustration. There's a large number of the projects that still haven't actually got in the ground. So like we gave the book group their library, little library, about 12 months ago, and because of COVID we can't get permission to actually put it in the ground because everybody's worried about people swapping books and that being the root of spreading COVID, which is understandable. And again, sort of, there's been similar barriers across. So one of the things that we wanted to think about today is to have a wider conversation contributing to some of the work that Simon's doing, thinking about what learning and advice can we offer and can the community offer to other people in similar scenarios. So that's my little pitch. I think, Simon, are you happy to pick up on the how-to guide?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. So one of the other outputs, products, if you will, from this time in Well Rotherham is the development of the how-to guide, how to get active in your community and your neighbourhood. How this came about, it was prompted in many ways by the conversations that I and Chris and Sam and some of the community leaders, the community builders we were in touch with, some of the conversations we were having together and we were having with local people, local residents in Catcliffe and the other neighbourhoods. And the conversations are about getting involved in the Well Rotherham initiative, getting involved in kickstarting a project or an activity in down their street, in their neighbourhood. So really kind of framing the conversations about getting involved. And we heard lots of kind of common questions, I think, during those conversations. Common questions about, I don't know how to, I don't know where to, I don't know, you know, how to do any of this stuff really. So, you know, that kind of gave us pause for thought really in terms of what can we offer to these people and what can we offer outwards more generally in terms of helping people understand a little bit more about how to get involved. And we also shaped the guide by reflecting and chatting about our own practice, if you will, as in community development and community action, and also chatting about some of the aspirations and some of the community work that we have been involved in too. So there was this piece about listening to, having conversations with local people, local residents. A second piece about our aspirations, our motivations, our interests in our own communities that led us to begin to develop this how-to guide. We've gone to another slide, Chris, that shows, so this slide here is showing the 8 steps that we put together based on the conversations and based on the kind of listening and thinking really. And what I just want to say about this slide is that each stage or each step in this cycle, in this circle, it can be the starting point. So you don't need to begin at the top, understanding what's out there. You can begin anywhere in terms of how you use and think about the guide and community action. we're at the stage now where each of these elements in the cycle has got its own, if you like, set of pages with additional information, ideas, and questions for people to consider. And we're moving fairly quickly to a point of product design, if you will. So actually pulling all this information together in a usable format for people in organizations, people in community development practice, and importantly and critically for local residents and tenants and people who are wanting to kickstart or take further their community ideas and projects. So the version we're going to work on and look at is draft, and we call it a guide. We'd be interested if you want to give us any thought about its working title. And we're also at the stage of road testing it, if you will, with you today, but also with a number of other people in different places as well, as a way of kind of sense checking the ideas and the content a little bit more. And obviously wanting to develop further our thinking about how to. So what we want to concentrate on in this next part of the session, the conversation together, is exploring the boosters and the barriers to community action, community development. Because as Chris hinted in a piece about the Well Rotherham project generally, we came across quite a lot of hurdles and barriers in our time in Treaton, Catcliffe and Waverley. Some of those were to do with relationships with local residents. Some of those barriers were to do with running up against bureaucracy and administration in the local council, the kind of computer says no type of response. And we appreciate and we understand from our experiences in Well Rotherham and elsewhere that supporting and developing community initiatives, community action is not linear, it's not straightforward. It's complex, it goes all over the place, and it takes a lot of time. So we really want to invite you now in this next part of the conversation to help us think a little bit more about the barriers and boosters to community action. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, so I did a bit of running around on Friday and I went to meet some of the people who've led our project. They couldn't attend today, but they very kindly committed to film their feedback to us on what the boosters and barriers are. So what I'd like to do is share those videos. I think we'll do the first one, which looks at an introduction and the boosters, and then we'll pause and do some chat after that.
I'm Helen Francis. I'm currently working on a project in Rotherham whereby I'm setting up a group called Rotherham Climate Action, which is supported by Friends of the Earth. The biggest things that really motivated me is speaking to other members of the community, speaking to organisations, local organisations such as Well Rotherham and the council, just having those conversations about the topics that we have in common just motivates me so much. And I think it also it's made me realise how much help there is out there, and even though I've got, I might have an idea, actually there's lots of people out there that are willing to work on it with me. So I think speaking to others has been the big boost for motivation, especially if you're working on a long-term project, because mine's ongoing, and every now and again having meetings with local community groups and other people just reminds me of why I'm doing the project that I'm doing and how it's benefiting the communities.
My name's Martin. I'm currently the project lead to build and develop a green space stroke community wildlife garden for the Waverley community. The thing that's helped this project, probably more so than anything else, is the willingness of complete strangers and organisations to help out. I came into this community project having little or no experience of community work, and I've been amazed by the support and knowledge being passed on to me by fellow community groups and other organisations. Terrier Dare, and I'm from Treaton Community Centre. The project I run here, I've been running for the last 5 years, is updating the community centre with projects and everything that goes with it. The main thing that you need to look at if you're trying to boost any sort of progress, you have to look at the events that people are interested in, probably by consultation, find out what, shall I say, ticks the box, what they want to be looking at, what they'd like to get involved in. And usually, if you look like that, you can probably get into people to come in to help you and sort projects out. I like the fact of being able to get involved with people, with projects. And obviously, another target is to get involved with the kids. Obviously, parents are there and you're bringing people on in. So that's a very good hope to be able to move on and get projects completed.
Okay, so I'm Matthew Johnson, the Secretary of the Rother Valley Riders Mountain Bike Club. We're based in Rother Valley in Sheffield. We're planning on delivering a purpose-built mountain bike trails in the Rother Valley Country Park with support from Well Rotherham. And we're supporting Well Rotherham with the mountain bike trails at the Waverley site at Catcliffe. So the biggest boosters that's helped me deliver the project is actually managing to find the right people to talk to. You go through many, many hoops and fences and get sent around many houses, but once you find that right person, it all kind of comes together. It's seeing the fun and the trails being used, you know, and understanding what Rother Valley Country Park, etc., can be with these trails added. You know, it's got every other facility going for it on the outdoors, and you add the mountain bike trails in, it can be an awesome facility for a UK cycling destination, slap bang in the middle of the UK. So it's seen everybody on the trails, the community, the spirit, the club behind it all. It all comes together as a really positive community.
Sure. So, thinking about what we've just heard there, what were the standout points for people in the room? What did you take away as the strongest boosters for communities, supporting strong communities from that?
I think it's fascinating what you're doing. I hadn't realised what the project, the Well Rotherham project was, but it's right down the road from me. I live really close. And what a funny community you're bringing together then. So you've got your big brand new posh housing estate, and then there's all the industrial estates around it, and then there's the old mining villages on the other side, and you're trying to bring some, well, you are doing, you're making that feel as one. I don't know. Yeah.
We've had more success in some areas than others, if I'm honest. But yeah, I mean, it's never. I think one of the things that came up, the individual people that we've connected together have really given a lot of value to each other. So Terry, the legend, the legend, who is Terry Adair, who runs Treaton Community Centre, he's just incredible. He's involved in so much stuff, and everybody like queues up to give him money for the community centre that he's took on. He's just put like 3 new pagodas in the garden, and it's like, how did you get it, Terry? Everyone's just like, give it to Terry, give it to Terry. But he's offered loads of advice to the other areas, so that they're all parish councils, which is kind of different to when you're working in the city. But they never spoke to each other, like the neighbouring councils. Yeah, especially because Catcliffe weren't happy that Waverley went off and formed their own council, so took some of their precept money away as well, which is quite interesting.
So I think it's worth mentioning to the group, I actually live on Waverley, which is really weird seeing those videos. Highfield Square is 10 seconds from my house, and the garden, Martin, that's lit. That you can see the school behind that's just opened. So it's really weird actually. But I was going to say that the passion of the people. So the guy doing the gardening, he's so passionate about it. The guy doing the mountain bike trail, he's very passionate about it. But I do live on Waverley, so yeah. No, perfect.
I'm sorry for calling it a big posh new estate. Oh.
That made me smile. I smiled then. I went, yeah, because that's me, really posh. I'm all about the posh. So yeah, and so I've heard about those. Obviously, you can see the garden. It's kind of, when summer comes, it's all there. The garden's there. I know the mountain bike trail, that's been going on for a long time, and I think that's not an easy thing, because you can't just say, right, we're having a mountain bike trail, there you go. You've got to have an actual mountain bike trail that's pathed and got safe and stuff like that. But yeah, so feel free to ask me any questions about it as a resident.
I mean, one of the things that I heard, Chris, in that from all the presenters was about knowing the right people and knowing people. So this idea that as a boost to your kind of motivation or your project life, if you will, knowing who to contact to ask favors from or to ask for funding from. And Terry mentioned that, and Matt, the mountain bike fellow, did too, you know. So yeah, understanding who's out there, and yeah,
I suppose, and it's also kind of the enablers, isn't it? The people who help you get stuff done. So for I'm thinking for Terry and for Matt, if you find the right kind of sponsor for your community activity, then that, like for a lot of people who give funding out, if they find a project that they like, they're very happy to continue to support it, I think.
Yeah.
But getting that right connect in the first place is challenging.
Yeah.
One of the barriers that you might have, or might have had, is, let's take Waverley. So I have to talk about Waverley. Is how do you speak to the residents of? So Waverley's growing every day, houses every day, 4,000. Let's have a figure as 4,000 people. Let's say you want to go on there and give some money out to people on there. How do you contact 4,000 people? And what I would say is, we do have a council on here, Waverley Council, and no disrespect, but they aren't very what's the word? They don't communicate with the residents on here. No one really. They're not very engaging whatsoever. So if you go to the council and think going that way is getting you a voice into 4,000 people, in reality, Waverley, it's not. So I guess how do you ask 4,000 people? Some don't have the internet, although some don't use social media, some don't. How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways that we tried, Paul, in Catcliffe really early on, wasn't it, Chris, when we rented the dance studio ex-chapel, and what we tried to do is fairly sort of traditional asset-based community development approach, which is be out in the space, in the locale. So we hired this room for a day, and we were literally accosting people on the street, if you will, with flyers and information about the Well Rotherham, the Good Ideas Grant, and just trying to engage people in a chat, in a conversation about living here. Is there things you'd like to see, things you'd like to get involved in, and then inviting them in, really. And in some ways, it does feel a little bit sort of false in a way, or as though you're making a kind of sales pitch. But I must admit, my experience of doing that in Catcliffe was quite, I thought we initially made some really good contacts, and numbers of people really excited and keen to get stuck in. What then subsequently happened in terms of delivery or development is a different story. But I think there is something about getting out into the neighbourhood, into the space where people are, really.
I think I would offer, we did. So actually, I think that approach worked well, didn't it, in Catcliffe? In Treaton, less so. We got much better response just going through Terry and going through the people who knew the networks, but you have to be really mindful of that. Just because somebody is part of a community organisation doesn't mean that they speak for the community.
Yeah.
And a lot of engagement work will reach the same people. Interestingly, we're doing, so Caris works with me on our Growing Communities project, our legacy piece, and for that, with the learning from Well Rotherham, we're directly commissioning a locally based social enterprise to deliver the conversation for us. So it's led entirely from the community, and we're only 2 weeks in, aren't we? But they've had an amazing response already. And the same, so we employed somebody from the Waverley community who was very, very well connected to lead some of the conversation. But again, I think Waverley was difficult because when you talk about bumping spaces, there was no school, we went to the pub, but there's very little in terms of kind of physical places in Waverley, although as the estate grows, that's developing.
That is an issue. That is an issue for residents. So funny you should mention that. There is now a school, but there is an issue. Yeah, there's a pub and the school. This retail part that should have been up and running 2 years ago still isn't there. Olive Grove is now called. It is now coming again, smaller. But you're right. There's no hall. There's nothing there on here.
We are funding a hall, but we've just got planning for it. But we're waiting for some other bureaucracy that's holding us back. I'm going to move on and play the next because I want to make sure we hear everything that the community people said. So.
The biggest barriers for me as a project was, first of all, as I mentioned before, finding the right people and money, and finding pots of money. There's money out there, but it's finding it, and you have to just stick with it and keep persevering. You know, it's all voluntary work. It can take a lot of time in your evenings, and weekdays, etc., weekends. But if you're passionate and keep pushing, everything comes good in the end.
The main barriers for our project, I would say, would be the legalities, planning permissions, deal with third-party organisations such as landowners, etc., and the time it takes to get things done, having things out of your control. But not that negative, I'd probably bring a positive by saying it's made me more tenacious in getting this project done and seeing it through.
There's a lot of people would like to get involved. I mean, it's down to time, right people, right aptitude to take on jobs and roles. Usually you'll find that if people have potentially retired, you can sort of get them to come and get involved in doing certain events, certain projects. We've just undergone a gardening project, or we're undergoing now, where we've had to develop this land. You know, they'll come down and they'll give you a hand. So we've done a lawn, we've laid turf all around here. We've had a pathway out way for wheelchair access, and these are ways that you can incorporate getting people on board into different events.
I think there's a couple of barriers that I faced. One being that I work full time, so my time is quite limited. I try and protect my time on the weekends, but with other people's help, that does help to achieve the goals of what we're trying to do and how to benefit the communities. One other barrier I've also found, which is out of my control really, is relying on other people and other organisations. So for example, if I'm wanting answers from the council, that they don't always get back to you straight away, or if I'm waiting for permission to be able to put something somewhere, it takes a bit of time, and which requires patience, which is fine. It's just knowing what I've got control of and adapting the way I work and working with others in partnership to get those things done as quickly as possible.
Cool. So that's the community feedback barriers. What were people's kind of key takeaways from those?
Nothing's easy. Nothing's easy. You need to. If you think I just want to have a little part of this estate, I want it to be a nice garden. The idea is great, but the logistics, especially on Waverley here, where every different road is owned by that road's owned by the land trust. That road's still owned by the builder. It's just so. I think you need passion. If you haven't got the passion, you'll just give up. So finding those people with the passion. Some people might have the passion but not the know-how, and so almost pairing them, giving them support. The support might be the know-how or some project skills or contacts, but you need someone with a passion that's going to every day wake up and think, right, I'm going to keep going today. I'm going to get this garden if it's the last thing I do.
Yeah,
Caris, were you going to come in as well? Were you wanting to say something a minute ago?
Yeah, just something along the lines of relying entirely on voluntary hours to make projects happen can be difficult because yeah, I think, was it Helen expressed that, you know, she works full time and likes to safeguard her weekends. So yeah, if you can tap into funding to pay people to help deliver projects. I've worked on projects before where they have got wings at the point where a paid professional comes in to support.
Yeah.
One of the things that we tried to do, so for example, the community room, the community hall, and we're funding in Waverley. Part of the purpose of that is that it will generate income that the community can then use. So if you've got the community garden and you want to pay a gardener to keep on top of it longer term, they can, and it just frees up. I mean, our hope there is that it'll end up with funding to keep doing the Great Ideas grants, but the community will generate that income for themselves. I think Simon and I have definitely been reflecting on the videos yesterday, but that issue of you have those conversations and you see that passion and people light up, and then 12 months later you're still trying to get like a piece of paper that you need or an agreement that you need to put something in a space that should be the community's is very frustrating. I don't know if I've got any top tips of how to get round it, other than maybe it's about managing some of that expectation from the outset.
Yeah, I think for me, just thinking about some of the barriers in the Catcliffe experience was that we have to kind of spin multiple plates all at once, really. And so there's getting the plate spinning with local residents, local folk, getting them interested and engaged, and then at the same time, for example, spinning a plate which is about people in the council, and really have to kind of be flexible and flex your time and whatnot against all of those plates, really. And I think to do the Catcliffe again, tactically would have spent a lot more time early on with some key people in the council who were, like the neighbourhood manager and things like that, just to kind of prime that person with what we need from you.
Yeah.
Because if we think about kind of asset-based development and asset-based working, it's all those constituencies that need to be in the room and need to be on the same page, really, about what we're trying to do here together. And here's what I'm asking of you, Chris, and here's what we're asking of you, Simon. So that there's a dialogue around it all.
Yeah, you can have a project that people want, the community want. You can have the money to fund it. Then you'll always find someone somewhere who says, no, you can't do that actually, because it's some permit or something. And you think, we've got the money and we want it. Everybody wants it, and we've got the money, but someone will say, well, you're not allowed to because that's, I don't know, some red tape somewhere, and that is a frustration. Very frustrating. Yeah,
we were throwing money out the back of the car and no one was picking it up. We were sat in the limousine.
Yeah, we couldn't give Catcliffe any money. They wouldn't take it. Almost because they got to a point of distrust with. They were just like, "What do you mean you're going to give us money? There's got to be a cat."
Yeah.
I'm going to play the top tips just because we're coming into our final 10.
Advice would be, if you're passionate about doing it, just get out there, do it. Don't matter if you've got the experience or not, because there'll always be someone there within your own community or further afield that will lend a hand or support you in your quest to create a project.
Over the years, I've always sort of got involved by trying to make things better within my community. I've looked at ways that I could increase probably any projects that people were wanting to undergo, and by doing so, usually I've been successful in getting some funding for this. I've not gone too adventurous. I've gone and tried to get things that were in reach, and by doing that, you get support. People come on board, and if they think that progress has been made, people do want to come and help you, and I get pleasure in sort of making sort of improvements to my community.
If you're looking at starting your own community project, I would recommend talking to user groups in the local area, people that are using the facilities, not just your own kind of demographic. Perseverance, I mentioned before, you know, you'll get knocked back many, many, many times, but just don't take no for an answer. You've got to keep your vision, etc., on somebody else's desk to get it seen. You've got to keep it there in the forefront, and just keep pushing. You know, talk to user groups, talk to different people, talk to local MPs, talk to the council. You know, what's worse that can happen? They say no. I'll ask them again in 3 weeks' time, and ask them again in 3 weeks' time, ask them again in 3 weeks' time. And they'll say they've had enough, and they'll say yes.
Best advice I can give to someone who wants to do something in their community is getting in touch with local organisations. There are so many. So where I am, there's Well Rotherham, there's Love Where You Live, there even the council. Even just talking to people about certain things, what I've learned is that they might know someone, and then that someone might know someone else, and then your network just grows and grows. And there's so much opportunity out there for people, not to just help you, but funding as well to get projects off the ground and running. So join all the Facebook groups, or have a look at what there is in the newspaper, or even just talk to people that you know in your local neighbourhood, because chances are there is definitely someone or lots of organisations that will help you.
Okay, so from the top tips then, what did you take from that as the top tips? Or offer your own if you've got any additional ones you'd like to put in the mix?
There's something about aspiring to small wins first, wasn't there? So big, you can achieve and kind of start to show that you're making a difference quickly, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is really key. If you can make some things happen quickly, it just builds that trust and momentum. Yeah.
The good thing for many things is they don't take no for an answer is definitely a good motto to have. Unless the thing you're trying to do is just, I don't know, not good, not good. But if you're passionate about it and you know that the reason you're getting a no is not because there's anything wrong with what you want to do, just because it's just a massive red tape, then just keep asking. And finding the right person that can say yes. Well, there's so many people that can say no and only have the power to say no. We've done this in one of our projects. When we installed some benches, some talking benches. You have to find the person that can say yes. They might not say yes. You have to persuade them to say yes. But if you speak to the wrong person, all they can do is say no or refer it on. So that person's kind of pointless to speak to. You need to find the decision maker. It's not always easy. But find someone who can say yes to what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Caris, how about for you?
I think just like echoing what Paul said, like a phrase that I've heard before that I like is persistence beats resistance. So we just keep going. But yeah, I think there was something about mapping out and tapping into what is already there, because communities are so rich in assets. So just trying to be aware of everything that is going on and working together, so you're not treading those or missing a trick.
Yeah, there was a theme about just do it as well, wasn't there? Just push ahead and other people catch up. I think that's very much been Terry's philosophy, is just get on with it and ask forgiveness.
We had a saying at HSBC, JFDI, and you can work out what those words stand for. Just do it. Just do it. We need to JFDI it. We used to say that all the time. We need to just JFDI it. It's quite hard to say, actually. And a better thing to say, but yeah.
There was also a theme for me as well. They're really about just people, networks and relationships. So encouraging for the practitioners and the people in the community. I think one of the things that we really wanted to focus on with Well Rotherham is that when we left, we'd have left a network and connections. So we always knew it was a 3-year project, and we didn't want to label things as our project. We wanted the community to lead them and own them and connect with other people. So joining the dots was one of our kind of big themes. So I think it was good to have in our minds that we were never going to be around for a long time. And that wasn't actually our role.
I wanted to ask you about that, Chris, because presumably those 3 communities didn't come to you and say, can we have a project to help bring us together, did they? So that's an idea that what the people think would be good for those areas, isn't it? You have to kind of sell that idea to those communities, I guess.
And I think, we're doing with SY, with the Housing Association now, is our follow-on work. We are picking communities where we have assets, like where we have quite a lot of homes, and saying, actually, we think making these communities stronger will be good for us. So I don't think there's any, I think it's okay to pick an area you want to work in, as long as when you get there, what you deliver is community-led.
I think that's a really good point you made, Aisha, there, because public sector organisations are for decades and decades have parachuted into communities and neighbourhoods and done, health-related, stop smoking campaigns or, whatever intervention-based campaign or service it is really. So we have to be mindful of that, really, that when we go into communities, what's our role and why are we there? And I think what's interesting about South Yorkshire Housing, for example, and I think also Zest and places like SOAR, is that they do have a legitimate place in that space, because South Yorkshire Housing, for example, are providing, houses for people to make into homes. So they are, if you like, they have a vested interest in that neighbourhood and that community space. I think the trick is also about how we do what we do. And as Chris mentioned, about being community-led, about it being all this, kind of stuff around co-produced, if you will, about empowering people and supporting people in terms of making their decisions and contributions to their community life, I think, is rather than imposing what we think is the right idea. We don't do missionary work anymore. It's bad.
And if that is our closing statement for the session this afternoon, I hope you found it useful. It's been really nice for us to have this discussion with everybody in the room. Thanks everybody so much for your time today. We'll be recording we've recorded the session, that'll go up on the website, and we'll be in touch with the how-to guide and other information. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Eat well, folks.